gathered here today to have a dynamic discussion about creating and scaling a tabletop gaming-related business. That's why we're all here, to talk about business. Damn, it's going to be fun. And we want to celebrate the screw-ups, find the wins, and drop some valuable knowledge. And here today we have, on the very end, a well-seasoned improv performer who plays a convincingly salty old man on our show, Novel Chronicles. Also my D&D table mate, Mr. Mark David Christenson.
Hello.
Next to him we've got he calls himself a voice mercenary who is killing it. He plays our adventuring party's resident sad boy, actor on Novel Chronicles, Crowe.
That's me.
The moodiest of all.
Oh, yes, the angst.
Yes. And then we have our jack of oh so many trades, voice of Benetier's most nervous goblin, and founder of Brooklyn Quarter, as well as game master of Novel Chronicles, Mr. Timothy Reese.
Hello.
Next we have, all the way from Massachusetts today, a graduate of YouTube University with honors. It's the marketing director from Wyrmwood Gaming, Bobby Downey.
I'd like to know, I wanted to tinkling playing in the background when that happened, but this was still a great intro.
We're so sorry.
He did not graduate.
He definitely dropped out.
You're right.
And then we have our self-proclaimed owlbear conversationalist, as well as an overall badass and creator of Dispel dice, Karen Wang. And right next to me we have an impressive set storyteller, an overall renaissance man, and the owner of Cantrip candles, Christoff Visscher. Hey, and hi, I'm your moderator, Rani. I'm an actor. I'm also on our show Novel Chronicles, and I'm a former theme park production professional, as well as the creator of Inner Arcana Quest. All right, so to warm us up today, I've got a really random question. Without any explanation, if your creative empire had an adventuring patron, what race and class or monster would they be?
We go in order or just?
Nah, whoever wants to jump in.
So I think Wyrmwood would definitely be a monster. At the risk of being basic, we'd probably be a dragon. And we'd most likely be the dragon catalogs that Crystal Sully designed for us, based on the logo. So, yeah, I think we'd certainly be a dragon. Feels basic, but we'd be a dragon.
Is there a specific type of dragon, maybe? Like what colors?
Well, the dragon's named Catalogs, which is a wood, which is a purple wood. So maybe it'd be dark purple.
All right. That sounds awesome. Who else?
I can go. For Brooklyn Quarter, it would be 35 motivated but lacking in communication skills goblins that would never have risen above commoner, but would still be getting things done.
A gaggle of goblins.
A gaggle of goblins, yeah. Yeah. Or as a grumble of goblins.
Cantrip candles would probably be a fire genasi sorcerer. I don't know, we can make cool things out of nothing, and we are fire-based. As candles.
So I think Dispel dice would definitely have to be a wizard. They're just constantly taking a bunch of materials, throwing it together, and coming up with something. As for the race, probably going to have to go with Dice Goblin. Just
Is it like an alliance that we're forming here, or is it like a rival?
A war.
Oh, the alliance is, like, our alliance is totally chaotic.
Okay,
so.
great, yeah.
Are your goblins lawful?
No.
No?
I don't think goblins can be.
Anyone can be anyone.
Anyone can be.
That's true.
Exactly.
Okay, so next I've got a question. Why tabletop gaming? What made everyone choose this space?
Novel Chronicles cast me. I'm just new to it all. I'm the newest to the cast into like role-playing games. I've played with friends through improv. I got into improv when I moved to LA as an actor, fell in love with it, and then that appealed to me because friends that I did improv with did D&D, and the next thing I know, but then I was the player that really annoyed them because I want to do the improv part, not the rolling the dice part. Math has never been good for me. So that's it. That's why I'm here.
So I feel like I'm a little bit different on this panel because I'm actually not a gamer per se, but from a production point of view, woodworkers have a background in creating like bespoke furniture, right? And typically, when you're buying something that's a necessity, you're looking for the best deal that you can possibly get, right? If you need a table, there's nothing exciting about that. You just want to go out to IKEA, buy the cheapest table you can because it's utility. When you're in the tabletop market, or more specifically any hobby market, when you're buying something that you don't need but you want, now all of a sudden you're looking for the greatest possible thing you can buy. So, when we first started making furniture, it was like, all right, here's this gorgeous $10,000 table. Well, who the hell are you? Why would anyone spend $10,000 on a brand that has no, recognition or no really reputation at all? But when you start small in the hobby market and you make something for people when they're passionate about something, they're more likely to value the craftsmanship, and then from there you can pivot. So definitely, specifically, the hobby market is because, from a production standpoint, people are always looking for the best instead of the deal.
Cantrip was kind of born into the tabletop community. I didn't set out to make candles before already knowing about Dungeons & Dragons and participating in that. And by being so welcomed into that community and feeling so at home in that community, it kind of blossomed out of that. So I didn't choose the community chose me.
Yeah.
There was a period of time in my life where I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was pretty depressed. I had a friend who really made an effort to reach out to me, and I canceled on him more times than was socially appropriate. And then finally he was like, it's my birthday, come play D&D with me, and I had never played D&D before. And then, so I came, we had a blast, and basically we started doing like 15, 18-hour sessions, like once a month. It was crazy. But it kind of gave me like a community of friends and helped me out of that. And then one day I was just looking at like the dice that were on the market, and I was like, what if these had flowers? And so I kept waiting and looking for it, and I just wasn't really seeing it. And so I started pouring dice and got obsessed. That's kind of how it started.
Yeah, I started with Pathfinder back in about like 2015, 2016. And then when I played it, I'm not going to go into the specifics, but it was bad. It was online, it was on Roll20, back when Roll20 wasn't as polished as it is today. But I fell in love with tabletop games because I love creating characters. I used to be an animation major and a screenwriting major now, and that comes with like making characters and kind of constructing what they are. And D&D, specifically 5th edition, gave me that opportunity to just make characters, and I can attribute like mechanics to them, and that kind of helps ground those characters in my mind. I'll draw them too. Gives me an excuse to draw.
Yeah, like 15 years ago for me, I was working as a journalist in New York, and right out of college, started off big news agency, and I worked there for about a year and absolutely hated it. And I was like, doing it at a very high level and despising it every single day. And so I left that and went into post-production, and then found myself kind of in this malaise where I had a set of skills and I had this vision of the thing I wanted to make, but I couldn't figure out how to wrap my head around it and make a thing. And the first time I had ever played Dungeons & Dragons, I had no concept of like live player or any of that. And so we just sat around and played one time on a whim. And it was the most fun the most I'd ever laughed like sitting down, which was phenomenal, right? Someone was like, you should play D&D. I was like, I'm not gonna. And then I played and I was like, I never want to stop. And so I then had to pivot like, well, how do you actually make that look good on camera? And that was really difficult. So, but that was the journey for that for me. Actually the challenge of making it look good actually was the massive encouragement to keep doing it.
Does anyone else have any random careers that they did before this that maybe gave them skills that they feel that they still use today?
New York club DJ.
Yay.
Really?
5 years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
I traveled internationally. It was a very weird life.
I worked as a deckhand on a fishing boat. I learned persistence. Yeah,
You did it.
That is hard.
yeah.
Uh,
Spitfire and Ray Del Rey.
I don't know if it's random, but I was a theater major before I wanted to pursue candles, and I think there's a theatrical element to our brand that has kind of encompassed or come into play because of what I did before I did that.
My career was super boring. I was in motion graphics, so I did boards.
Boring?
Boring at all. Boring at all.
And then motion graphics.
It's not like being like a deckhand. That's like.
Arguably, motion graphics is more exciting than being a deckhand.
Well, I mean, I love the ocean, so.
Me too.
And then I was also in animation for a while, so.
My family owned a martial arts academy for a long time. So I was a teacher for about 15 years. I was a dance teacher and competitor for 4 years. And then I was a DJ for 5. And I definitely think, like, when your family owns a business and they're relying on the kids to figure out the social media stuff, that's definitely, like, where I kind of got the inclination to market things online. And I was making ads in PowerPoint and, DJing. I'm familiar with audio equipment and, video for dancing and stuff like that. So I've kind of gotten like a little tiny bit of taste of the skills that I'm using now and like all these other kind of creative fields for sure.
The takeaway here is if you become a DJ, you might have a tabletop.
When everyone become a DJ.
Speaking elf music all night.
Yeah. Tavern ambiance is 10 hours.
Speaking of being a DJ, Bobby, Worm Life is this weird mashup, I feel like, of being sort of behind the scenes in your shop, mixed with using a veneer press to make paninis. And how did you come up with what you wanted the show to be, and how has it evolved over time? Because I think it's really cool how you're all so radically honest.
Yeah, that's something so the idea came from, I started at Wyrmwood before it was a company. I started in the CEO's basement, and it was me, him, and like his cousin and his brother. And I started as a woodworker, because that was my major in high school. And as the company continued to progress, everyone just, if you're ever in a small business, I'm sure everyone up here knows, or anyone that's in the audience that has a small business, you don't have a job. You have a bunch of hats that you have to take on and that you have to take off and put it back on depending on what the company needs. And that was the point where we were at. And, through a bunch of different things that happened, they put me in charge of social media, and that turned into Kickstarters, and that turned into all that other stuff. But we weren't doing anything on YouTube. It was the only major platform we weren't doing anything on. And I was just like, well, what would work on YouTube? What works on YouTube? Long-form content, blogging. What would that look like through the Wyrmwood lens? And then I made something thinking that Doug was going to be like, you're insane. There's absolutely no way we can put the very first episode was about how we didn't have schedules. No one had commitments. No one had hours. You could work 5 hours. You could work 40 hours, and you wouldn't be penalized at all. You could literally no show for work, and you wouldn't get fired. It was crazy. We were a very radical company, and I was like, let's just let everyone know how ridiculous we are. And I thought he was going to be like, we can't air out our dirty laundry to everyone on the internet. That's insane. But he was just laughing his ass off the entire time and thought it was so great. He's like, we should keep doing this. So I continued to just make the company look as bad as I could. And it worked. And I definitely it's not even figured out what the show is really. It's kind of just whatever happens, and I try to spin it as the most entertaining type of content we can. And most of the time it's negative. And I try to make that entertaining, and I don't know why it's working, but it is. But yeah, Worm Life's going to continue to change and pivot depending on what works, because I don't think the show even has a definition. It's just kind of this fluid thing,
And everyone else, when you decided that you wanted to start your business, where did you start? Did you start with finding the right partners? Did you start with finding, financial help, materials, marketing, crowdfunding? What was the first step for you?
I often get intimidated when I think about finding partners and investors and all these other financial things. It's all ethereal things that I'm very like, how do I do that? And I still ask myself that. All right, what's next for us? We've had some good success, but eventually that foreboding financial talk, investors thing is going to happen. And I'm still scared of that. But I think the first thing you need to find is customers. I think that is the most important thing that you need to be able to test if your product is enjoyed by others. Because you could think it's the coolest thing in the world, and maybe even the investors think it's the coolest thing, but if the customers don't, then you're going to end up not having much success. So, and that doesn't mean you need 10,000 customers. That means you need to find stable, not stable-minded, like a stable flow or consistent flow of people that in different situations, you show them the product and they're like, oh, that's cool, and I'm from this walk of life, and I still think that's cool. And so once you know you have customers, you're off to the races, I think.
And for you, was that social media? Was that word of mouth? What was it?
I'm a big believer in word of mouth. Obviously, social media is like the modern word of mouth, but people started buying our candles and started posting about it, and I was like, this is gold. Like, if people are liking the product enough that they're willing to help me advertise, we're really onto something. So good customers, very important.
It's working. You got 3 candles in my backpack right now.
Hey.
I bought one earlier.
I'm definitely a lot less methodical in that way, I think. When I started, my friends were basically telling me, you have to put this on Instagram. And I was like, what's a hashtag? Like, I was not very active on social media. So for me, it was really learning how to use it and trying to take it out there, learn photography, and just have your product or your work be seen, and taking that feedback and developing something with it.
I think for me it was, so for anyone who's ever done a tabletop live play, it is deceptively simple looking. And for me, it was a thing of breaking down all the parts and then trying to figure them out one at a time. And from there, because you can't really like, you have to have all 4 wheels on the car before it can roll it all. And so I think before we even did a single episode, it took me like 8 months of work to break down all the technical steps just to make that happen. And I had friends helping out from like all over the world that I was reaching out to with different specialties. So I was just doing it like homegrown, didn't have a budget. And doing it in New York was doubly difficult because we didn't have space. And so you run into this, sometimes when you start something, you run into this weird balancing act of going, I have to spend a certain amount of money to make a thing that will generate a certain amount of money. And finding that balance. For me, it was freelance work. I just did a crap ton of freelance work and I paid for stuff. But that also meant that I was now working a second job to work on a third job. It was like, oh my God. So, but that was what it was for us. It was just trying to figure out that balance of what's good enough to start to do something.
This one's for everyone. What's the first big win that you feel like you experienced in starting what you do now? And for our actors, what's the biggest win for you?
Getting cast on novel Crowe.
Suck up.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
I mean, mine goes all the way back to like booking my first SAG job. This is so off what this panel's about, but like my
It's all
first
on
SAG
topic.
job probably when I was living in Utah, because like getting that role and getting like that external validation of like, great, I'm cast, and also it gives me the opportunity to get me to move to LA because I'm now SAG eligible and I don't have to move to a union town, even though that's now questionable. But now I'm like, I was eligible and didn't have to come here and have to work to get in the union. So that's it. That's probably my biggest win. And then, I don't know, meeting people in this out here. Novel Chronicles is a big win because it was like, it came out of left field. It wasn't like, I didn't go chasing it. They came and got me, which was a bonus. And then, yeah, so that's it.
Was that SAG job the Wyrmwood project?
No,
Okay.
that's funny.
I was going to say, that's how we got
This is like
yeah.
side talk, but how I got introduced to Novel Chronicles is, I'm from Utah, I grew up Mormon, and my first movie ever was a Mormon movie called the RN, which stands for Return Missionary. You can Google it, all that's about in Mormon culture. But that movie, he was a DP, this guy that now is a director, has a podcast. He was a DP that liked me, we just stayed in touch. He put me in some random stuff. And your wife, Danielle Beckman, went on his podcast and they had a conversation that had nothing to do with me. Next thing I know, I'm getting referred. They're like, hey, we got referred by this guy to you. And I was like, oh, cool. So, I mean, I know that like the industry out here especially is like all about like who you know, but I think that's I think you have to take that as less daunting of like, don't look at it as networking, like walking in a room and going like, who do I need to know? It's more about, you get jobs about like who your friendships and like what actually a true partnership or friendship you develop naturally versus just being icky, because it gets icky fast.
That's great advice. I know everything that I've done every collaboration that I've done in the industry has been based on like a friendship. You know what I mean? Every single time I've done something that's been like a all right, sign here, and then you'll have this license. It has flopped, but every time we do something with Jimmy because we're friends, it's like really great. So when something comes from a place of sincerity and authenticity, I think it's a recipe for success. But Wyrmwood has a lot to be thankful for. We've had a lot of wins, but the first big win was really just our first Kickstarter that like allowed us to continue to develop what we've been. But the biggest thing that comes to mind is definitely we launched a Kickstarter during 2020, and it was this crazy time where everybody was scared to go outside. It was a really bad time for individuals, families, businesses, whatever it may be, and we ended up having this really great story where we did the biggest Kickstarter that we had ever done that kind of shaped the brand to what it is now.
Is this the table one?
Yeah, the modular gaming table. And it went crazy, and it blew all of our expectations out of the water, and we had bought another company, and it was just this crazy narrative coming out of a time where like not a lot of people were winning. So the fact that we continued to get that support and we offered prosperity to so many people, we have like over 150 craftsmen now, it definitely has felt like everyone that we laid off came back. So that was definitely the biggest win or the most validation that we've felt as a business, I think.
Huge win.
That's
Yeah.
huge.
Hearing the story makes me all excited. That's
Yeah.
a great story.
It's I'm trying to keep it quick, but we're very fortunate. We're very lucky.
My biggest win was when we got into our first retail store. I hit the pavement, as they say, and went to different stores around the LA area. Hey, I got these candles. They smell like different fantasy areas. What do you think? And a lot of no's, but eventually I got a yes. And the funny thing is when you get a yes, especially in the retail world, they all talk to each other because they all want to make money off the products. And so the retail store that said yes started saying, these products are selling really well. And then there were 4 more retail stores, and then there were more. So the first store that said yes to us was our first big win.
Is that close to here? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's DPT's. I'll shout it out. DPT's in Burbank, owned by Donna. And the nice thing about that gem of a store is a lot of tabletop community celebrities or actors that live in LA frequent that store. So that was a really nice exposure thing for Cantrip.
Did your success with that lead you into wanting to open up brick and mortar?
Oh yeah, the brick and mortar didn't happen until 5 years after I started. So a lot of people think that, oh, they just came out of nowhere. No, you don't open a store out of nowhere. I didn't want to open a store. I had weird dreams of that down the line, but we opened the store out of necessity. We needed more production space, so our store is kind of like a brewery setup. You make the candles in the back and you sell them in the front.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is cool.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
there's a window that you can see into where you're...
Like an ice cream
Oh,
shop.
yeah.
There's a lot of different ideas.
That actually is really dope.
Yeah.
I never seen anything like that.
What was the most daunting thing about opening up your space?
I'm still feeling the most daunting. There's a lot of effects of, Bobby, you were talking about these hats when you're a small business, and I thought that I would take off more hats and actually put on more hats. When you open a store, you have to hire employees so that I'm not the only one working there the whole time, and then you have this very daunting feeling of, okay, it's not just my own wellness that I'm responsible for, but also the 7 people that work with me. Like, we all are a team now, so I'm still stressed all the time about that, but it's been getting better.
It's my turn.
Big wins.
Big wins. So I think that my first real win was we had a tweet when it was the first week that I was posting social media pictures. I had no idea what I was doing. I think I used too many hashtags, the wrong hashtags, and I was gaining followers every day slowly, but within the first week on Twitter, we had a post go viral, and I just saw how many people wanted this type of product to exist, and I had never had any sort of validation for that before. And so I would consider that my first win, and the second win would probably be the sample sale that we had on the website. So I had a small sample sale before the first Kickstarter, and we had something like 100 sets. 9,000 people made accounts trying to check out. So that showed me that we had a lot of work to do.
Big win.
Daunting than it knew.
Yeah, a lot of angry emails though.
I'm sure that was the best part.
Daunting than success. Failure is easy. No,
What?
seriously, it's very easy to fail. When you create a monster, right?
I couldn't make 9,000 sets
That's
in
what
my
I'm
kitchen.
saying. Yeah, that's harder than being like, oh damn, we only sold 3. That's easy to bounce back from. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Also kind of piggybacking off what you said, there's this, at least speaking personally, there's this strange desire to kind of underestimate yourself. Like, oh, I'll make this much, and get that out of your system as best as you can, because when you have 9,000 people, there's no time for underestimating yourself. You just have to step up and meet the demand that people have for you. So try to avoid that way of thinking if you can.
I definitely don't have time to think that
Oh, I
way.
still do, but it serves you no purpose. It's not useful.
Well, you're 100% correct. But I'm still terrified. Every time I launch a Kickstarter or a project, I always think, oh, maybe no one will show up this time. I remember talking to Bobby when we were launching our collaboration, and we were just like, I was like, Bobby, what if no one buys anything?
This was after she launched the most groundbreaking dice Kickstarter that's ever graced the platform.
It's like, what if no one wants my dice?
Literally,
I was like, how are we going to worry about
Dice.
that? But
Tied into underestimating sales, what's the biggest challenge that you've all faced about scaling?
Oh, I got one for that. Yeah. So when biggest issue I ran into was that like it became a mantra of everything I was doing is that everything broke at scale. Because it went from my background in post-production, most people, if you film something, you want to put it on YouTube. You got like one camera, maybe 2, right? People who have like an overhead shot and they're filming something on a table. We're using like our first show we ran 9 cameras. But then you can't just plug 9 cameras into a computer. And then we're trying to do that live. But then we also had 8 microphones live in the room. At the same time, we have a full cast at tables. And there's no production people, it's just me. And so it's like everything was just breaking down at scale. And it made me literally pull everything back when we moved to Los Angeles a year ago and just systematically build a system to not try to. There's an expression in Silicon Valley of like build the plane as you fly it. And I think that works for things that is our software. But for actual people sitting in a room and trying to film, that doesn't work. Yeah, because if the camera goes down, it's like a cat sitting for 30 minutes as I try to fix it. And so it was instead like make a system that you can then deliver in whatever you're doing. That was like a huge game change for me.
Physical space has been troublesome for us as we're scaling up, storing all the materials that you need, and then with the supply chain mishaps over the last 2 years, that's been a real daunting thing to overcome. When we first moved into the space, I was like, there's no way we're going to fill this all up. Like, this is so much space. And guess what? We literally are full now. Like,
don't underestimate yourself.
yeah. I mean, at the time, I was like, this is a big, big space. It was an apartment to a store, so big difference. But yeah, space is probably the biggest thing that we're struggling with scaling up. Like, where do we store the stuff? And how do we brace for the inevitable continued supply chain interruptions? Meaning we kind of try to hoard wax and glass and all that stuff because it's going to go out of stock eventually. So it's been tricky.
How has manufacturing changed for all of you? Did you have an answer for the last one? Or? Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, in terms of scale, for sure there have been challenges. I think Bobby can even speak to this regarding work.
Oh, yeah.
Because you guys are scaling during the pandemic, which ties into your question in a way that's unprecedented for anyone at the company. For me, going from a single creator to having a team to needing to locate space, not even really including sort of the devastation that the supply chain faced, the impact that all of our couriers faced as well. Let's say I need, a piece of sandpaper to sand a set. Well, now suddenly if I need a really specific type of material, we were having issues sourcing things from Germany and Japan that we couldn't get anywhere else, and we just couldn't get them into the country. And when you can't get it at scale, your production can only move as quickly as the smallest
small piece.
process bottleneck.
Scaling is so complex. It's so much more, however complex you think it is, or if you have to do something like that, 10x it in your head. It is so difficult to go, oh, we've made 300 of these tables, and now we have 11,000 to build. And it changes the game completely. And it doesn't matter how much, you could have the best equipment ever, you could have the greatest, you could be cash rich and just like get all of everything perfectly in exactly where it needs to be. So theoretically, you should be good. I think the hardest thing, scaling up is complex, but the hardest thing is leadership. Because no one cares about the company more than you do if you're starting it, or if you're an owner, or you have some actual stake inside of it. And not that people don't do a good job when you hire them, but again, with all the hats that you're wearing, you have to then take those off and put them on other people who may entrust them.
Delegating.
Exactly. And no one is, you're all in your head, you're always going to be like, no one's going to do this as, oh, I wouldn't do it that way, or I would have done it this way, or oh, I don't think he's valuing the right thing. So you can have all the greatest machines, you can have all the marketing, you can have all of the support, but if you don't have the right leadership at the helm to steer the ship, you're going to crash. So finding the right people, and Wyrmwood's mostly tried to do vertical integration, which is like, we don't hire people and be like, all right, we need someone that is already experienced in all of these things. We've continuously tried to just train people up to where they need to be. And most of the time that's worked. Sometimes it hasn't. But I would definitely say leadership. You need the right people at the top, for sure.
Yeah.
I had a visual of a rocket ship when I was first starting the store. Like, okay, Cantrip's going up. We're going up, 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 up. And I'm learning that visual is only half true. Because yes, you're going up, but there's a lot of width that's happening as well. If you don't account for all that, again, you'll crash or you'll kind of fall over. You have to build wide and tall at the same time, which is why scaling is really kind of tricky.
So one thing that I really didn't realize, because I had cast a lot of sets by myself, but when you want to implement a change and you want to problem solve when you're casting hundreds of sets a day, making any change in your process is now no longer instant. In fact, it can completely destroy your productivity and stop production altogether. So you really can't implement changes very easily.
And it cascades and gets worse with every set if you don't correct it.
Yes, but if you correct it, sometimes that becomes even worse. So it's a lot of this.
That's a great point.
There's like 3 outcomes. It stays the same, it gets better, it gets worse. And so you're kind of gambling whenever you make a change, and it's very expensive. That's why prototyping and designing the process is so important. But also a lot of problems don't crop up until you reach scale, especially if you're working between multiple locations.
Yeah, you can't forecast it.
Yes.
Karen, one of the things I appreciate most about you is your impeccable eye and attention to detail. And what would you say is the driving force behind that, and how, as you've grown, how have you been able to keep a handle on that?
Oh, interesting. So one of my mentors, his name is Christoff. He ran a motion graphics company, and he was really into branding. And he was one of my teachers. One of the things that he mentioned was that I had a really interesting sense of fashion. So it was something that I had to consciously think about.
Yeah.
And I think when it came to the dice, I had a specific vision in mind for it. I really wanted there to be a box opening experience. I really wanted the design to not necessarily speak to D&D. Even though I love D&D, I was thinking along the lines of jewelry, of nail polish, of cosmetics, other laterals that were really interesting to me. So I've studied those a lot. And I think I can see that same sort of inspiration in Cantrip candles. They're not kind of like I don't think of a dragon when I think of Cantrip candles. Yeah. And even when I think of Wyrmwood, this like really bespoke, high-end luxury product, it's No, it's beautiful. Like, if you ever get a chance at a convention to see these tables in person, I remember when it came out, I was like, how much are these tables? Oh my god! And then I saw them in person, and I was like, oh my god, they are beautiful. And so I like that we're combining design from all of these different levels into D&D. That's very exciting.
That's awesome. I have to fangirl for a second. I'm so excited for when your winter collection drops on the 15th. CMYK.
Oh,
CMYK. It's gorgeous.
All I want to do is be like, everyone look under their seats.
How did you get tables under all these seats?
So I can say this here, but CMYK is actually going to have a companion. Hopefully it arrives in time for the holiday season. If not, it will be in the next drop. But so CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and it's used in printing, so it's a big nod to my graphic design background. The set is actually inked in white. We're going to have another set that's inked in sort of like a black gunmetal silver that's much darker. So, love it.
Heard it here first, folks.
So my answer to you is, I'm a big lead and I like design.
Perfect. Let's see, if you could, and this is for everyone, if you could direct message yourself, one sentence, to your past self. We have a time machine that tweets. What would you tell yourself before you started your career?
Don't listen to your mom, you're right. No, that's a misrepresentation of my mom. I'm a total
amazing.
No, a total mama's boy, but let me explain.
Come on out.
So, yeah, the craziest panel. We have your mom right here. This was a time where Wyrmwood, everything was being reinvested into the company. And I had a job, I had my job at Wyrmwood. I hadn't acquired ownership yet. It was just a job. And they reinvested everything in the company, and I was not making the money that I should have been making at the time. And I was also a DJ at the time, so DJ gigs pay pretty well. And since I'm a mama's boy, my mom, has the password to my banking. And she was looking in, and she saw the Wyrmwood checks going in, and then she saw my DJ checks going in, and she's like, Bobby, I really think you're focusing on the wrong thing here. And I was just like, Ma, no, I believe that I believe in this company, and I believe that if I continue to work hard, I should get the money that I need. And thank God I did, because 2020 DJs are out of business, and we had a great year. So it was, don't always follow the money. It won't always lead you to where you think it might lead you. So take that, Ma.
So I've got one more question. I want to give everyone else the chance to answer this one, but I have one more question before we open up to the audience. So if we could just share our tweet, and then we're going to move forward.
Tweet to myself is, no one gives a crap if you can do it all by yourself. You will not get the credit you think you will. Ask for friggin' help. Comma, you idiot.
Yeah. You idiot.
I'd probably just say, hey, Bill, calm down. Just calm down. Breathing exercises. Learn them earlier in your life.
I would say, Christoff, you see the world in a certain way for a reason. We all kind of are in our heads and we're looking at stuff and we're like, oh, I think it looks cool. There's a reason why we do that, and if you can figure out a way to kind of expose that way of thinking, it will benefit you. Or share that way of thinking, expose the weird word to use.
I would tweet to myself, fail often, fail hard, fail fast.
Yes.
That's it.
Oh, we're waiting on my tweet?
Yeah, what about you, NBC?
Yeah.
I'll just tell myself to stop tweeting. Get off this format sooner, man.
Yes.
Life's better than this.
That's a good one.
Sorry to be the tweet downer.
That's where the money is, man.
Twitter's
Yeah.
Something I've got, what steps can we all take, and, us as business owners and players, to be more inclusive? How can we all, in the tabletop realm, how can we all be more queer, inclusive, anti-racist, pro-intersectional feminists in this space? What steps can we all take? It's a big one.
That's a big question.
It's a huge one, but I just want to speak as a white male who is
Please.
this, just because I think we have the most work to do on that, and I think it's exactly that. Come to the table going, you're going to work at it. Like, don't come to the table thinking you have the fucking solution. Come to the table and be like, these are the things we have to work on. And just keep actively putting it in there. That's what I've learned over the last 2 years, is like that will take you so far if you just continue to work on it, even outside of what you do. If you're just working and doing the steps, specifically for me, like working on being anti-racist, it will bleed into your creative field. It just will. So just work at it.
Completely agree.
The internet's a powerful place. Sometimes it can lead you into the right direction, and sometimes it can lead you in the wrong direction. We're all talking about how great Twitter is, right? So for example, this is something that I experienced when I first started working with Karen. I expressed interest in working with Karen, and Dispel didn't have the greatest, the most welcoming arms when they hit the scene. A lot of people, I think, saw the greatness that she achieved, and there were rumors about her stealing designs, and there were rumors about her being a scam. In fact, Wyrmwood worked with a dice company that I won't name, and they hit me up and they were like, hey, I hear you're interested in working with Karen Wang. She's a Chinese scammer. Don't work with her. And don't always listen to the masses. If you think you're doing the right thing, you may, by accident, be boycotting a solo woman minority creator, which seems to be the opposite of the mission that we're all on. So I would definitely say reserve your judgments for when you actually meet someone in person, and you don't always have to listen to who people are attacking online. Because if I listen to them, Karen's the most competent, capable, and talented person I've met in the industry, so I'm very happy I didn't listen to them.
My answer is, I think when I was a kid, I didn't even speak English at this point. I didn't know what the word blonde meant, but when I was probably 3 or 4, I would cry because I didn't look like Cinderella, and I would ask my mom why. And I think that sometimes, I make dice. No one's wearing the dice, but if I expanded it to apparel, I think one of the things that I thought about is I would like to have some representation. So if you have kids who don't necessarily look like what is the majority, there's representation for them. And even if it's something as simple as a hand photo, it's something that I'm always considering.
I guess don't rest on your laurels. As a Black business owner, that's something Cantrip is highly praised for, something we put on all of our social media, and it's something that there's a button for on Google now. So and sometimes I think, oh, you've done it. You're a Black person in the tabletop community, you've made your mark. And I constantly am reminding myself that, but there's others like me that also need to be brought into this community. So that's something that I am constantly challenging myself that, yes, I am not a white male, which would be a different set of responsibilities in unrooting racism, but I can also help in any way I can. So I try to make Black characters on our art prints and Black wizards, because you don't see Black wizards anywhere and stuff like that. I just have to constantly remind myself that it doesn't stop with me. I have to pass the buck forward in anything I do.
The theme that I'm hearing is support each other.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. We have time for a couple questions. Any folks have questions? Yes?
I have a question for Dispel Dice.
Oh, hi.
What was your reaction when your first Kickstarter went absolutely bonkers?
I'll paint the scene for you. I had slept in probably 2 days. I had run out of shampoo and toothpaste, which a friend then brought to me later in the day. And I remember just staring at the computer, not really understanding anything. And I think I was in a bathrobe, but it was
Oh my God, I'm just so stressed out.
A stress threshold.
It was
Yeah.
during, no, it wasn't during the pandemic, this was in 2019, I just.
Wait, what else what did you say you ran out of?
Sure.
Toothpaste or what?
We don't need.
No, let me know.
Your friends and you were out, so.
But, you know, the weeks leading up to that were incredibly stressful because I had friends who were helping me out, but I didn't have a team yet. And so I was trying to do everything. I was like, download Adobe
Yep.
Premiere. It's like, you know, you're Googling, it's like, how to cut a clip, you know?
YouTube University, I'm telling you, that's the best place to graduate from. They'll teach everything you need.
I just remember seeing the numbers go higher and higher and being like, there is absolutely no way in hell I'm going to get these by the date. And you got them to me by the date.
Oh.
Well done, well done.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad.
I was like, I'm fully prepared to wait 2 years. But no, they came right on time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, right in the back.
Thank you for your panel. I found it very inspiring. I'm a fan of demo in VR. I'm wondering if that's a platform that you see yourselves getting into at some point, tabletop VR gaming.
I've always had in the back of my head that I will work with holograms. I just don't know anything about holograms. But when they happen, I want in. I want in, and I want my guests.
I went in with you, because
I want in.
if I could do an AR tabletop layout where I was down projecting something that you
Yeah.
could interact with digitally, I would 10-year-old me would die. So,
Coming from the theme park world, there's people working on that.
Yeah, I just want to be at that table, and I want my ideas involved with that hologram.
I'm ready for the tabletop cyberpunk future. Let's go.
Definitely from I don't know if it's proper VR, but Wyrmwood's definitely interested in creating a portion on our website where if you're interested in furniture, you can kind of augment reality into your home so you can see what it looks like. That's hard, but we're working on it, and yeah, love to get into it if we can, because the tables are deceptively big.
Touching upon scaling, I was just thinking about the fact that how do you visualize 11,000 tables and what space is going to be necessary to store it or transport it?
Yeah, we had to buy another company.
And then I think regarding VR, I think that VR is an amazing space, and I really can't wait to see what it brings. For me, selfishly, I just happen to enjoy it. I don't have any business plans with it.
Oh, we have one more question.
Yeah, you talk about failing often. For anyone, is there a moment that you felt one of those failures led you into something you really needed to have happen?
That's a good question.
I had a mental breakdown 3 months ago, and literally needed to depend on the team that I hired, and it was forced into it. It wasn't by my own choice. And I consider that a failure, and it actually taught me that we are much stronger than I realized we were. So, fail often.
I think all failures are necessary in order to get where you're going or where you want to be. This isn't exactly the question, but I'm kind of flailing about.
Flailing without failing.
Yes. Good night. I'll flail about the question where failure isn't failure. Continuing to doing something that isn't working and not changing is failure. So if you decide, if you're doing something and you're throwing something up against the wall and it's not working, the only thing that's failure is you continuing to do that, right? That's failure. Knowing it's kind of hard to, because not giving up is a great thing to think, but it also is knowing when to give up, not give up, but pivot, is really, really important. Because if you have this never give up mentality, and you're like, well, I really believe in it, but no one seems to like it, but I'm just going to keep going, it might not be the best. You need to pivot, and exactly what you were saying, Christoff, is if people aren't liking it, you know what I mean, or if they're not supporting you, or they're not finding it, interesting enough to support, then, the attitude isn't, well, they're wrong,
Right.
and I'm going to keep going. It's like, no, pivot, find out something that works. So failure isn't failure, pivot, and it's always necessary, and yeah, don't beat yourself into a hole trying to make the one thing work, even though it may never work.
Failure's a part of life.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if you can make yourself do it, celebrate the failure.
Exactly.
absolutely.
That's really all.
Yeah.
Someone's like, ugh, failure.
The longer you go without failing, the more that one failure will sting. You want to fail as much as you can so that you stagger it out over a period of time instead of all at once. Exactly.
That's great.
Spotlight.
That's great advice.
If you want to fail a lot, become an actor because every audition
Exactly.
is a failure. And it's just there. You just have to keep going. You have to be like, get something out of the work you did. That's more important than the failure.
See victory and failure.
I feel like we could go on for another hour, but we don't have another hour. But I would love for all of us to give any plugs, socials, all of that, and we're going to wrap up. We can start at the end.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Hi. You yeah, online, only Instagram these days, at Hobbit138. Check out my podcast, Aw Crap, a Hellboy podcast. Just me and a good friend, Kate Thompson. We're just going through everything Hellboy. We're not experts. We just share our thoughts about it all. We love Mike Mignola's creation. And then I just wanted to plug that movie that got me into the industry, White on Rice. Check it out. Google it, find it. It's called White on Rice. All Asian cast, and then this guy. So, great indie movie. It's so funny. Good comedy. I haven't plugged it for years. There you go.
There it is. All right, well, yeah, I'm Bill Crowe. You can find me. It's Bill Crowe, or Bill J. Crowe VO, pretty much every social media platform. I also really want to thank another Bill that I know, named Bill Holmes, who is the one who pretty much orchestrated me getting on Chronicles. He is part of a audio drama called Carcerem. It's C-A-R-C-E-R-E-M. And it is on Spotify, wherever you can get podcasts. It's great. I'm in one episode. It's awesome. You do a great job. Thank you, Timothy.
I met Timothy Reese pretty much everywhere, and for me, Brooklyn Quarter. That's the production company that does Novel Chronicles. We just had our first film at Tribeca. My wife started and executive produced Lies Anonymous, and we're working on a feature film now. But also Novel Chronicles, our new tabletop web series that these wonderful people are on the cast in. And check it out. We've had 4 episodes out. It's on YouTube. And I have business cards with QR codes if you want to drag the link. But yeah, check it out. It's really good.
The next one's a shopping episode.
It is. It's the best one.
By far. The next episode, incredible.
Yeah.
Episode 5, that's the one you want. That's the good one.
So check it out. I'm really
good one.
It's a good show.
It's a great show.
I'll keep it short. Wyrmwood Gaming across every platform. You know where to find us. Short and sweet.
I would check out Wyrmwood Live on YouTube. And the Panini episode is very good. I highly recommend it. It makes me waffle. I don't even like paninis. But check out Dispel Dice at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we also have a website. Store drop is Winter 2021 collection, December 15th at 12 p.m. Pacific.
Cantrip candles across the board, Instagram, Twitter. It's the most fun on Twitter. I know you guys can get on Twitter, but I love Twitter. We also have a storefront now. It's on Santa Monica Boulevard, 5427. You can Google us. It'll pop up. Please stop by. And if you haven't yet, we have a booth here, 1603. That's where we're at.
Victoria Rani, you can find me at MX Victory Rani on all platforms. And that's it. Thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to our panelists.